You're listening to the Options Insider Radio Network, the home of the Options Podcast. For more quality options programs, visit theoptionsinsider.com or search for Options Insider Radio Network in your podcast provider of choice. Listeners can also access all of our programming through our mobile app available in the iTunes and Google Play stores. Select programs are also available via live stream at mixlr.com/options-insider. That's mixlr.com/options-insider. Don't forget to follow along with your favorite programs and submit your own questions for the hosts at twitter.com/options, stocktwits.com/options, facebook.com/theoptionsinsider, or via questions at theoptionsinsider.com. Gold, crude oil, corn, soybeans, and more. With so many tradable products, the futures options market can be an intimidating place. How can you possibly keep track of the latest trading developments across so many different products? Don't worry, we've got you covered. Welcome to This Week in Futures Options, the program designed to help active futures options traders stay on top of this ever-changing marketplace. Each week, we'll break down the top trades, hot products, volatility explosions, and much more. This Week in Futures Options streams live, so be sure to check out our live stream via the Mixlr app. That's MIXLR. Or join our live chat room at mixlr.com/options-insider. Whether you're an experienced veteran or a newcomer looking to separate the wheat from the lean hogs, This Week in Futures Options has the information you can't find anywhere else. This Week in Futures Options is brought to you by CME Group, the world's leading and most diverse futures and options exchange. For more information and educational resources about futures options at CME Group, visit cmegroup.com/options. And now, get ready to break down the latest futures options trading activity. It's time for This Week in Futures Options.
All right, everybody, that music means we are back once again for TWIFO, This Week in Futures Options, the program where the name pretty much says it all. We break down the week that was, and indeed still is, over there on the futures options side of the fence. What are we going to talk about this week? Are it going to be ags, metals, equities, rates, FX? You never know. That's why you have to tune in each week. My name, of course, Mark Longo from theoptionsinsider.com, as well as, of course, from the ever-exciting, at least we tend to think so, Options Insider Radio Network. Reminding you of three things at the top of the show here. First off, if you're just listening to TWIFO, what are you doing? You're missing out on nearly a dozen other shows on the rest of the network. So wherever you're getting this, it's available on every platform under the sun. Make sure you've upgraded to the full network. It's all there readily available for you. And of course, if you do like what you hear, throw a few stars our way. It does help new folks continue to discover the show. We've all seen it over the last few years. There are legions of people who are new to this market who want to learn about it. So help them discover it. Leave a review wherever you're listening to this show. And of course, if you want more in your lives, then hey, who doesn't at the end of the day? These markets are crazy. They are tumultuous. We all need a little bit of hand-holding. That's why our pro has you covered with great pro Q&A sessions. Some of the best minds in the world of options and derivatives, including quite a few guests on TWIFO, like Carly Garner and like Mr. Dan Gramza, and many more have joined us in the hot seat over there, as well as Options Oddities, a show which, quite frankly, if you're listening to that show and you can't find at least one thing to trade, then you're not doing it right. So those two shows exclusively for you, as well as live access to this, everything else we do. Giveaways, we're coming up. Time to give away soon. The March Pro Trading Crates. All sorts of fun going on over there. By the way, if I sound a little bit different this week, it's because I'm not coming at you from the Chicago studios. No, I'm roving here in the Southern studio for the next week or so. So going to be fun times as we keep on rolling. Just me in the hot seat this week as we keep on rolling right on into the Movers and Shakers Report.
It's time to find out what's rallying on the light side and falling to the dark side at CME Group this week. It's time for the Movers and Shakers Report.
All right, everybody, welcome to the Movers and Shakers Report, the portion of the show where we do just that. We break down the week that was, and indeed still is, over there at CME Group. If you want to see this report for yourselves, and follow us at Options on Twitter, or, of course, CME Group on Twitter. We both tweeted out right before showtime. And if you want to access this report and all the other reports we're going to talk about on this show, and a whole bunch more, then only one place to go, bantix.com, BANTIX.com. You can sign up for the free trial there of all things Quick Strike. We really do just scratch the surface on this show here every week. Not a lot of time to dive into the nitty-gritty every week, but that report and that bantix.com will give you a good taste of what they had to offer over there. Because it's just me, I get to choose. All right, to the dark side we go. On number 5, we have soybean meal off exactly 2%. It was number 4 in the other direction last week, up 5.11%. On number 4, we're still staying in the ags, going ag adjacent out to the livestock listeners, with lean hogs off 2.32%. Number 3, it is copper off 2.63%. Number 2, from the metals back to the ags, it is rough rice off 5.45%. And the number 1, staying in the dark side again this week, listeners, staying in the ags, we have oats off 8.85%. All right, to the light side we go now, listeners. Number 5, we have silver up 4.24%. Number 4, we have heating oil up 4.55%. Number 3, it's Brent up nearly 6%, 5.96%. So we start in the metals on the light side. We go right into energy, and we're pretty much going to hang out there the rest of the time. Spoiler alert, listeners. Number 2, RBOB up 6.52%. And number 1, light side bullet, thanks to our friend the Saudis and the Russians, WTI up 8.35%. It was number 5 in the same direction last week, up about 4.5% last week. So it's been a effervescent couple of weeks out here for all things WTI. And since energy is dominating our light side this week, listeners, I think we're going to start there first.
It's time to tap into the deep options well of black gold, Texas tea, nat gas, and more. It's time to talk energy.
All right, everybody, welcome to the wonderful world of energy. You know where to find this report and everything else we're going to talk about on the show here this week. CMEgroup.com/TWIFO, TWIFO. Then, of course, click in that report under the asset class, go down 2 slots to energy, then over to the product family right at the top to crude oil. That's where we're going to start this week in WTI. And how much paper going up this week in this Saudi and Russian buoyed week? We have nearly 700,000 contracts on the tape, 692,000 to be precise. That's a pretty aggressive week for WTI, which makes sense. We were just hanging out in the high 60 handle not too long ago, listeners, as we're coming in to start of the show today. 80.5, up 4.81 handles on the week, or about 6.3%. So going from a high 60 handle to an 80 handle, listeners, that's a big week for WTI, and that's represented in the numbers out there. By the way, of all that paper, nearly 700,000 contracts, 38% going up in the May contract. You might be wondering, what is the vol out there in May WTI, listeners? It has about 34. That's off about 2.25 handles right now. The May contract has a little under 12 days to go out there, listeners. So it's right inside our frame of reference, but it's a perfect place to hang our hat this week nonetheless. We can make an exception. Not a huge evolution on the skew this week, which is kind of interesting given how much underlying movement we've seen. The puts last week, nearly 8% bid, 7.8% bid. This week, 8% bid. So the puts kind of retaining their same level. The calls last week, 4.3% cheap. This week, 6.9% cheap. So the call is coming in a little bit, which is interesting. Again, we did shoot up that skew curve a little bit. So normally expect if you gently drift up the skew curve, you expect the calls to come in, maybe the puts to get a little bit bid. Instead, we kind of shot up there for a bit, but now we've been hanging out there for a little bit. Maybe that's why the calls are coming in a little bit. Either way, intriguing stuff out here. Let's see what's lighting it up out here this week, listeners. And I said we're hanging out at about an 80.5, so it probably won't surprise anyone that it's the 80 calls this week, listeners, that are leading the dance out here with 22,000 contracts on the tape this week. The big day was Monday. Of course, we came into this week kicking it off with all this news out there of the Saudi-Russian alliance out there, call it what you will, cutting production. And then, of course, we were off to the races for the rest of the week. So Monday was the big day. 15,000 of those 22,000 contracts going up on Monday. 3,000 today, 2,000 on Monday, and about 1,800 on Wednesday. It looks like mostly closing throughout the week, so that's kind of interesting. Maybe we had people who had overwritten the 80 strike, and as we exploded towards it, they were scrambling to get out of the way. Or folks who had loaded up on the 80s, and once we got up to this level or got close to it, they were dumping them, taking their profits. Either way, a ton of closing paper this week on the May 80 calls. Right behind it, we have about 19,000 of the May 75 puts going up this week, and these were all opening. So kind of a tale of two cities here on the May 80 calls and the May 75 puts. The big day, once again, actually the big day for, weirdly enough, the big day for the May 75 puts was not Monday, it was Tuesday, listeners. 6,300 going up on Tuesday, 5,200 on Monday, 4,800 on Wednesday, and about 2,900 so far today. Opening throughout the week. So as folks were abandoning the 80 calls, they were piling in to the 75 puts this week in May. So kind of interesting. And if you thought maybe 80 was not far enough, given the fact that we have blown through it now, how about the 85 calls going up about 15,000 times this week? Once again, the big day was Monday, 8,800 going up on Monday, 2,500 roughly each Tuesday and Wednesday, and less than 1,000 today. It looks like mostly closing on Monday and Tuesday as well. So folks, as we exploded north, we're bailing on the 80s and the 85s in large numbers. Let's go a little bit farther afield, see what else we can find out here, listeners, on the old WTI this week. What about the 70 puts in June, listeners? Those are pretty active this week as well, going up 12,000 times this week. It looks like the big day for those, surprise, surprise, was Monday again, about 5,000 going up on Monday, 3,300 on Tuesday, 2,200 on Wednesday, and about 1,500 today. It looks like, again, mostly closing on Monday. So folks were just bailing on their positions across the board, except for the 75 puts in May. They were bailing on everything else, it seems like, on Monday. Once we had the news, folks were getting the heck out of Dodge. Let's see if we find anything else out here. Also in June, looks like the 85 calls were going up for a similar amount of size, close to 12,000 contracts. And actually, I take back what I just said, because it looks like they were adding these on Monday. So maybe there was a bit of a roll from the May to the June, because there was about 5,600 of the June 85s going up on Monday, and that was mostly opening. 3,400 today, 1,800 on Tuesday, 1,000 on Wednesday. So unlike the 85s in May, it's like these were opening all week long. So folks were getting the heck out of Dodge in May, and then I guess reestablishing here in June. So obviously some rolling action potentially here on the 85s in June. Let's look a little bit farther afield, and then we'll keep on rolling here with this Just the Facts, ma'am, edition of the show. Looks like 120s in June of next year. We're also lighting it up this week. I have a feeling this is going to be one of those, shall we say, interesting prints, listeners, and that does appear to be the case. Looks like the 110, 120 vertical may have traded 2,500 by 4,000 times on Wednesday. I think he also had maybe an 80-100 vertical going up at the same time. The numbers are all over the place, listeners. So let's see. How about the September 90s, listeners? Those are pretty active this week as well, going up 6,600 times this week. Pretty much all of that on Monday. And once again, everybody bailing, getting the heck out of Dodge. 5,500 on Wednesday. The other remaining 1,100 scattered throughout the week, closing all week long. So apparently the Sep 90s folks were getting the heck out of Dodge on those this week as well. All right, so WTI was number one on our movers and shakers. Unfortunately, RBOB, Brent, and heating oil don't do a ton of paper out here, listeners. So instead, we'll keep on rolling out to the metals next.
Werewolves beware. It's time to explore the options activity in silver, gold, and other shiny things. It's time to talk metals.
All right, everyone, welcome to the shiny stuff. Let's go out of that equity in the asset class, go down another 4 slots to metals. Then we're going to go in the product family to precious, and then go down 2 slots in product to silver, where we're going to be starting our day this week. Silver hanging out as we kick off the show, 25.09. So after starting off the year, pretty rough time for silver and a lot of the precious stuff. Obviously, the tumult of the last few months has really kicked the shiny stuff into high gear, 25.09. Up nearly a full point, or nearly 4% just this week. How much paper on the tape this week? A pretty active week for silver as well. 46,105 contracts on the tape right now, listeners. So it's a pretty active week for the number 2 out there in the shiny stuff. Now let's see, about 32% of that paper was going up in the May contract. This one has about 19 days to go, so we're going to hang our hat out there. Listeners, you might be asking, what is the vol in silver right now? It's close to a 30, about a 29.5, so up a little over 2, about 2.2 points on the week, so not bad. And once again, coming back to what I've been saying for a while, it does seem like most of the products we talk about here on the show, with the exception of your nat gas and some of your cryptos, are really hanging out in the 20s to low 30s range from a vol perspective. That's kind of the lion's share of everything we talk about. And once again, silver coming right into that range as well. Let's look at the skew. Metal skew is always fascinating. A lot of times there's an aggressive bid to the upside. Let's see if that's the case this week. Last week, the puts 2.8% cheap. This week, the puts getting cheaper, 4.3% cheap. Let's flip to the calls. The calls last week, 5.1% bid. This week, getting even more bid, 7.5% bid. Given the price action we've seen out there, not exactly surprising why the calls are leading the dance out here this week. Speaking of leading that dance, if you're wondering what was the number 1 contract out here, listeners, if you said the September 30s, you are the winner chicken dinner this week. 1,900 of those bad boys going up out here this week. It seems like they traded in a bit of a vertical. Looks like it was the 30-35. It went up 1,100 times on Wednesday, listeners, so opening on both legs. It also traded on a weird ratio on Tuesday, 700 of the 30s by 127 of the 35s on Tuesday. So weird day there, but straight up, looks like it went up straight up 1-to-1 on Wednesday, 1,100 times. So we have a total of 1,900 of the SEP 30s going up against about 1,300 total of the SEP 35s. Again, all of that opening paper this week. So again, kind of interesting, looking like we're going to see, people are looking for, I should say, a lot more upside to come out here in silver over the coming weeks. Let's look a little bit farther afield, see what else we can find. You know what? If the SEP 30s are not doing it for you, how about the July 35s, listeners? Also active out here this week. The July 35s going up about 1,500 times. 700 of that on Tuesday, and then the rest, 250 every other day this week, pretty much, listeners. Scattered throughout the week. So mostly closing, it seems like, on Tuesday and the rest of the week. So looks like folks may be getting the heck out of Dodge on some of these SEP 35 calls, listeners. Let's keep rolling, see what else we can find out here on this Just the Facts edition of TWIFO this week. Looks like the pretty much daily, about a few minutes to go, 24 puts also pretty active this week, listeners, going up about 700 times. The big day for those Monday, about 400, 200 on Tuesday, and then about 100 on Wednesday. A big goose egg today, opening on Monday, closing throughout the rest of the week. So the 24 puts going out in a few minutes, also pretty active this week. Let's hope, for the sake of these folks, that they were overriding these pretty aggressively out here this week. As we keep on rolling with the show, listeners, so we touched on energy, we touched on metals. You know what is dominating our dark side this week, though, listeners? It's the ags, so let's get to it.
It's time to get our hands dirty exploring the latest options, trades, and trends in corn, wheat, soybeans, and more. It's time to talk ags.
All right, everybody, welcome to the ags. Go into that drop down. You're going to pop out of metals and then go all the way back up to the top of the list to ags. Then click on that product family, grains and oil seeds. And once again, we're hanging out in the beans and bean-related products, listeners. This time we're going to go down 4 slots in the products to soybean meal. How much paper on the tape this week? Closing in on 60,000 contracts, so a decent week out here for soybean meal. By the way, if you're wondering, where is this trading right now? It's trading right around a 452, off 14 handles or a little over 3%. So once again, they are coming for all things beans this week. And of that nearly 60,000 contracts, 52% going up in the May contract that has about 15 days to go. So we're going to hang out there, listeners. What is the vol? Once again, in that 20s to low 30s range, we have May soybean meal at about a 23, a little bit below that, off about a third of a point this week. So not a huge evolution on the vol front. Let's see what's going on in the skew. And actually, you know what? The skew changing quite a bit out here this week. The puts last week, 4.3% bid. This week, pretty much going the other way, almost a full percent cheap. So they have swung in the other direction. The calls last week, 2.1% cheap. This week, about 0.5% bid. So the skew kind of flat now, but it had interesting shape to it last week. A slight bid to the puts and a discount to the calls. So a little bit of a mini equity skew out there. Last week, this week, kind of flattening up. So it seems like they're waiting for that next shoe to drop out here in soybean meal. And what was leading the dance out here in soybean meal this week, listeners? It was the 450 puts going away again in a little over 2 weeks, with about nearly 5,000 contracts on the tape, about 4,700. And looks like the big day was Tuesday, 1,500 on Tuesday, 1,000 each Monday and today, and then 1,100 on Wednesday. Opening earlier in the week, and then looks like closing in the latter portion of the week. Then behind that, we have the 440 puts, so right below it, going up about 3,500 times last week. 1,700 of that going up on Tuesday, almost 1,000 today, and about 500 to 400 each the rest of the week. Then behind that, we have the 480 calls, also out here in May, going up about 3,000 times this week. The big day for those actually today, 2,100 today, and the rest kind of scattered throughout the week. So interesting paper, kind of all over the place out here, which makes things kind of fun. Let's go a little bit farther out. Let's go to the 430 puts in July. These did about 3,000 contracts out here this week. The big day for these, 2,000 on Monday, 800 on Tuesday, and not much else to speak of the rest of the week. Looks like all of that opening earlier in the week, so a lot of opening paper on the 430 put strike in July soybean meal. And you know what, listeners, since we're hanging out in the ags anyway, we haven't checked in with our friends, the livestock, in quite some time. So we're going to pop out of the grains and oilseeds, go all the way down 4 slots to livestock. Again, a pretty active week out here for our old friend, lean hogs out here. So we're going to click on lean hogs, number 2 there in that product family. How much paper going up out here? Nothing to sneeze at, listeners. 43,000 contracts on the tape here in lean hogs this week. If you're wondering where the heck are lean hogs trading right now, we have that front future at about a 74 even right now, listeners, off about 1.25 points or 1.66%. Obviously off more than that if you extend it back to the end of our show last week. And this 43,000 contracts, 38% of it going up in the June contract that has 69 days to go. So a little bit refreshingly longer term paper out here in the lean hogs versus, let's say, the equities, and seems like everything else these days, which is all going the way of the dodo in the matter of minutes. Right now, what is the vol out here? And once again, it's in this 20s to low 30s range. We're at about a 28, almost a 29, at a 28.80 right now in the June lean hogs. That's up about 1.25 points on the week. Let's see, skew-wise, not a huge evolution this week. Last week, the puts, 8.4% bid. This week, 7.4% bid, so coming in a point. The calls last week, 4.5% cheap. This week, 5.3% cheap, so the calls getting cheaper. The puts getting a little bit less bid this week, I should say, than last week. And in terms of action, what was leading the dance out here? We're at about an 89 right now, listeners. If you said it was the June par calls, then you are the winner chicken dinner this week. 2,500 of those going up this week. The big day for those was Wednesday. 1,100 on Wednesday, 500 each Monday and today, and about 400 on Tuesday. Back and forth opening to closing throughout the week here. And then right behind that, we have 1,200 of the 106 calls. So interesting strikes out here. Almost all of that going up on Monday, about 1,000 going up on Monday. And again, looks like most of that closing. So some folks bailing on the 106s, it seems like, earlier here in the week. We also, keeping it a little bit closer to home, we have the Aprils. The April 75 still have 11 days to go out here. They did about 2,200 contracts this week. So April still clinging to life out here in the lean hogs. Looks like that was evenly split between Tuesday and Wednesday, about close to 1,100 contracts each on Tuesday and Wednesday, opening on Wednesday, closing on Tuesday. So a little bit of back and forth paper perhaps on these 75 calls there. And everyone's favorite, the lean hogs. All right, listeners, that is going to do it for this Just the Facts, ma'am, edition of TWIFO. Remember, you want to check out these reports for yourselves. CMEGroup.com/TWIFO. TWIFO is the place to go to kick the tires and light the fires. I'll be back in the studio next week for your usual edition of TWIFO. Have some great guests joining me, so look forward to that. Of course, Reminder, tomorrow is a market holiday, so no shows on Friday, no volatility views, and for you pro folks, no options oddities. But we are back again on Monday with your usual assortment of shows, the option block, and of course the crypto rundown, all the way through to next Thursday, another episode of This Week in Futures Options. Stay safe out there, everybody.
This Week in Futures Options is brought to you by CME Group, the world's leading and most diverse futures and options exchange. CME Group's markets help individuals and businesses around the world manage risks and seize opportunities. CME Group offers the deepest and most liquid options on futures across all asset classes, including interest rates, equity indexes, foreign exchange, energy, agriculture, and metals. For more information and educational resources about futures options at CME Group, visit cmegroup.com/options. This broadcast is intended for informational and educational purposes only and does not constitute trading advice or the solicitation of purchases or sale of any futures or options. The rulebook of the applicable exchange should be consulted as the authoritative source on all current contract specifications. You're listening to the Options Insider Radio Network, the home of the Options Podcast. For more quality options programs, visit theoptionsinsider.com or search for Options Insider Radio Network in your podcast provider of choice. Listeners can also access all of our programming through our mobile app available in the iTunes and Google Play stores. Select programs are also available via live stream at mixlr.com/options-insider. That's mixlr.com/options-insider. Don't forget to follow along with your favorite programs and submit your own questions for the hosts at twitter.com/options, stocktwits.com/options, facebook.com/theoptionsinsider, or via questions at theoptionsinsider.com.